Welcome to the Expansive Podcast. Always great to have you here. The podcast that's always focused on helping you be more expansive, both in business and in personal life. And today we have a new host that's actually been on the show before. We call him Friends of the Pod, and he's part of that crew, and always wonderful to have Richard with us. So Richard, Mulholland, welcome to the pod as my host today. How are you?
It's good to be here, John. I'm really stoked.
I think you manifested this because you've actually told me a few times that you love the pod, and we are always so ever grateful that you love the pod, because I actually know how critical you are. You are a perfectionist in many different ways and always need things to be done in a certain way. And for you to be giving that much time to us, and then also, I guess, wanting to be part of the conversation. And here we are. It's just you and I. Eric will be joining us a little bit later. And now you're part of the Expansive, Richard.
Yeah, you know what it is, John? So first of all, I literally never miss an episode, which is funny, right? Because we're friends and like we'll catch up, and Eric and I'll catch up. But I love listening to the show. And part of it is, it's not about the fact that it has to be perfect. Where perfection is, I have to agree with everything. For me, we're far too agreeable or disagreeable in the world today. We either really agree and it's brilliant, or we disagree and it's shit.
Right.
I like the fact that sometimes you or Eric will say something and I'm like, hey. And it's okay. And then I sit there and I think about it. And of course, I can't interrupt you. I can't stop you.
Yeah.
Whichever one of you is speaking, you're on a go. So then I have to hear out your entire argument. Then sometimes I leave thinking, okay, I see the logical path. It's still not for me. And other times I think like, oh, I never thought about it that way.
Right.
And so I love it. If the pod only echoed exactly what I think,
fair,
I wouldn't listen. And if it was completely against what I think, I wouldn't listen. And I think that this will always happen because you guys make brave statements. So you make unfully formed statements that often are quite counter-narrative, that go against the grain. So by design, people should be thinking. Otherwise, there's no expansion.
Wow. Wow. Well done. That was a great finishing line. But what I liked what you just said is you're like, that's why I'm a pro. That was that tilt, Rich. What I like is you also do that. You're very counter narrative. And that's exactly why I wanted to speak to you today, especially with your new book launch and doing all the sort of launches around the world. I imagine that you're speaking about it and growing it. So we're going to be talking about that. But before we carry on, I just want to remind the listeners who you are in my world. And I think who you are in many speakers' worlds. And you were really the first guy that I watched professionally as a speaker. It was the sales. You remember there was a sales conference in Monte Casino. And we're talking, I don't know, 2007, maybe 2000. We were talking way back. And dude, that's 20 years ago. Wow.
My son was born and he's 22 years old.
Wow. Okay. So, and I remember just thinking to myself, fantastic. That's what I kept thinking. I was like, this guy's amazing. I loved it. And you really inspired me a lot to get into speaking as well. And I love the fact that you were so brave. And I think it's your rebellious nature. It's like, and I found it very courageous to come into the world and say things that aren't really the norm, And so as the listener speaking, this is Richard Mulholland, somebody, the OG in my life that's helped me get to where I am in many different ways. And just wanted to give you that credit.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it very much. And it's wonderful. I'm learning as much from you, if not more. So that's amazing. Just on that, I guess, even from back in the day, and to go back to the counter-narrative stuff, I do believe that I'm counter-narrative. What I don't believe is that I'm contrarian. So I think that you and Eric, well, actually, people often accuse me of being contrarian, that I'm just trying to argue with everything. Right. But the truth of the matter is, there is 1,000 ideas. For every idea I disagree with, there are 1,000 ideas I agree with. I just don't waste any time talking about those. I might comment on somebody else's post and say, like, Pierre Duplessis wrote a post earlier today, and I just said, I love this. I agree. Yes. So I'm going to write the same post tomorrow because I agree with him. Right. So if I disagreed with him, though, then I might. So, for example, we disagree on strategy. Right. I will write something on strategy, not because I'm trying to be argumentative, but because what's the point on saying something if we're just saying the same shit that everybody else is saying? Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for exceptions. I agree with this. I agree with this. I agree with this. Anything I agree with, I comment on. And maybe sometimes if it links to some other idea I have, I'll incorporate it there. But for the most part, I'm trying to find something in which I think either it's counterintuitive, like, oh, that didn't seem to make sense, or it's counter-narrative in that we have been told this and it's not true.
Actually true. Yeah. So true.
And yeah, I think that's it's not about being argumentative. It's about trying to look for new ways or things that are fresh.
I think you're right. And I think it's always about the approach, Rich. I think it's how you come into it. And I think sometimes, definitely when we were younger, there was much more of a slight aggression. And I don't think it was trying to be aggressive. I think it was just how we were showing up, you know? And I always say I was an excellent Joe Burger. You know, I had muscles, tattoos, and a convertible car. And I think that's kind of the vibe that Joburg created. You had to be almost on the front foot all the time. You know what I mean? And so I guess what you've done is you've softened your approach to bringing new ideas into the space. And I think those things allow more ideas to bubble up rather than saying, well, this is the only right way or that's the only wrong way, you know?
Yes, I'm definitely that, right? I'm trying to move into when you're younger, you're kind of a creator. And now I'm trying to become an elder. When I'm young, learn things. Now I'm trying to still. I think I'm a better human being because I definitely think I was an asshole back then. There was no two ways about it. I was cocky to the point of arrogance. I was stronger, young, muscle tattooed, and I had the SLK. You know,
I remember your SLK
and a limo, and But here's the downside: is I miss that guy. I actually did a video last week, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this concept. I think that people talk about humility a lot, and I reckon that I'm a lot more humble today than I ever was. But you have to have the potential for arrogance in order for humility to matter. So if you're turning around saying, well, I'm humble, like, well, yeah, maybe because you deserve to be. But humility only matters when arrogance is available to you. So if you're something in which arrogance is available, you are able to be arrogant about this. You're good enough to be arrogant. Then if you walk back, then you can be humble. Then that's true humility, not performative humility. But if you're just saying, oh, I just want to be humble. No, maybe you're just shit. You're just not good at it.
I agree so much. And I think that, I made a post a while back about the difference between confidence and arrogance. And the thing that I landed on was kindness. And what I find arrogance to be missing is a level of kindness where it's a level of domination that's required. Whereas confidence says, let's go on the journey together. I don't know all the answers, but let's go together. I can hold some space. But I love the fact that you've also spoken about if you could turn that confidence into arrogance, but you chose not to because you were self-aware enough to come back and be humble in a way. Say?
Well, or kind enough, to your point.
Yes, kind enough. Yes, exactly. And so I think it requires conscientiousness and a lot of self-awareness to be able to do that. And I think when we were younger, we had a lot to prove. And I myself as well was very arrogant, but it also came from a place of insecurity. It didn't really come from a place of kindness to myself or to anybody else. It was really about dominating and showing people what I knew and hope that they would also accept the fact that I was some type of leader in some way.
Yeah, but arrogance is fuel, John. I think it's a helpful tool when you're younger. We're supposed to do that when we're young.
Right.
We're supposed to be arrogant when you're in your 20s and early 30s.
Right.
And we're supposed to become kind enough to be and self-aware enough later on to walk back from that arrogance.
Right.
Is that people are choosing humility as the end line or as the starting line. And so I think that Howard Mann, he once said things, and he was talking about something different. He spoke about the fact that athletes always run past the finish line. Yes. Okay. So they don't stop at the finish line. They run through it.
Nice.
I think when you have a field that you're passionate about, you need to run to the point where you realize I'm being a bit of a dick. And be confident to the point where you feel I'm being a bit of a dick. Recognize that about yourself and then walk back. Hold on a second, let me dial it in. But if you're not running that far, if you're not sitting at the cusp of arrogance potential, you actually can lose confidence. And that's what happened to me last year is I was being humble to the point of, because I know that people don't like me and I rub people up the wrong way. And I was being humble to the point of maybe trying this. And I thought, no, I've got to make sure that I'm on the peak of my game and then just don't be a dick.
What it reminds me of, Richard, is people that don't make money or don't know how to make money become esoteric. Yeah, it's the same thing, right? It's like, oh, I don't need money. No, money's evil. But you tried like hell to make money and you couldn't. So you went and like starting at the point of humility is like, I don't want to, no, I'm not going to be that great. I'm not going to push myself. I'm just going to start off as somebody that's kind of humble in a way that's kind of like,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It's an easy get out of jail card. I don't like those kind of things. I don't want money. In fact, I made that mistake and I thought I didn't. About 5 years ago, I had a talk and a part of the talk was about knowing you're enough. And I think when I wrote that talk, I'd been lying to myself that I'd had enough. And I think that I do believe that we should try and figure out what enough is beforehand so that we know when we've reached it that we're there. But when you realize, oh, I've not figured out how to maybe create more, be more, things like this, to then just tap in and say, I'm happy with what I have, can risk settling. And the problem is you can only lie to yourself for so long. Because the one person who can call you out on your own bullshit eventually is yourself. So I have enough in many, many aspects of my life, but there's certainly more that I want. And so I need to be aware of that.
Yeah, and I think it's really brave to want to step into that role, right? Because you got to put it's pressure on yourself. You're like, geez, I do want to move into that state. And so it's almost like putting yourself out there. You know, when somebody says to me, I've read one of your books, and my immediate emotion is, shit, this person knows me really well. I have no idea who they are. And it's almost like a very vulnerable place to put yourself out there. Plus, I heard your book launches were packed to the brim. And also, Eric told me that the initial aspect of your Cape Town one was quiet. And you were already talking about halving the room or doing something. And that is such serious vulnerability to put yourself out there. And you and I are, all of us are putting ourselves out there at the point of maybe disregard or even worse, irreverence towards us. And so I think we have stepped into that, you know, in many different ways by putting out so much content because, you know, it's hard being ignored or not getting the momentum that you want to get.
Yeah. You know, what's different is that if I spoke this thing in Hawaii last week for GLC.
Oh, did you? At GLC, did you?
I did a thing in the experts track on AI and stuff. And well, actually not really on brain-computer interfaces. And nobody had a choice. I can turn around and say there were, 500 people in the room at the time or whatever it was, or maybe it was like 150 people, but not one single person chose to be there because I was there. They were there and I arrived, right? So I was booked. So it's very, very different. Whereas that Cape Town gig, basically people were saying, I want to come and see this person, or I don't want to come and see this person. So there wasn't a case of they were in the room and I showed up, which is the case for most paid gigs.
Yes, that's true.
You do for EO and YPO, they've literally read you're the only bill, so they will arrive for you. Yeah. But even then, it's kind of different because a lot of people in those organizations will show up just to network and do things. Whereas at this event, your book launch, and you guys I know have experienced this a lot, they're deciding that whether you're interesting enough. And of course, it was Cape Town, and there wasn't that many people. And I was thinking, are they going to arrive? And then I think it was Eric who said to me, basically, but this is Cape Town. The one thing they're definitely not going to do is arrive an hour early. Calm down. And 1 minute I was chatting to Eric and we were kind of going through the opening. And then the next minute I turned around and it was standing room only. In the room, people were literally standing at the back. Yeah, and I thought, oh, well, that's okay.
Sure. That's like a
it's the biggest.
Okay. So let's talk about your book. And please tell us about the concept. Tell us about the title as well. I love the title. I think the title is superb. And how did you come up with wanting to write a book like this? And tell me about that before you actually tell me about the book.
Okay. So turned 50 last year in October. And I was really, it actually goes a lot back to what we were discussing at the top of the pod, which was confidence. And my confidence has taken a knock. And, I blame you in many ways because you're doing so incredibly well. And you are my North Star in terms of many of the things that I want to achieve and do. What I like is that you're also putting lifestyle first. So you want to achieve great things, but you also want to, just be John and have a great life. And that's what I want as well. And so if comparison is a thief of joy, in this instance, comparison is just me realizing that there's still more I want to do and still more I want to achieve. And realizing that if I'm honest with myself, and this was last year, I hadn't done that. And also questioning then my personal relevance. Like, am I relevant? Does it matter? Do I have something to say? And, why would anybody want to listen to this 50 guy anymore? I had young ideas. And so then I started thinking one of the biggest aha moments for me is my brain doesn't know that I'm 50. My body does.
Well said.
It's still, I kept on, when I was 20, if I thought of a 50-year-old, I would be thinking, I think they'd think thoughts. But I am 50 now and I don't think old thoughts. I think maybe I'm less of a dickhead than I was in my 20s, but I still get excited about the same things. And so that was the one point of relief, is realizing, but my brain is smarter and better. This shouldn't be a concept, but recognizing that the world we're in is a lot harder to stay relevant than the one that we graduated into.
Because it's changing so quickly. Yeah.
Totally. And so then I thought, and the more I spoke to people about it, so I did a talk for Mark Sham. I always try, when I go to Mark's gigs, I always try to write some new material. So I wrote a version of a talk called Relentless Relevance. It was originally called Ruthless Relevance. And actually, I think relentless is a better word because it speaks about the pace of change. And so I did this talk totally arbitrarily. I wrote it. And what happened was I got booked for it. Off the back of it, I did like 4 bookings straight away. And I got bookings for that talk just based on the post that Mark put out for the talk. And then people contacted me and said, oh, we'd like to have that talk. And I ended up booking in the same week. And I thought, okay, there's something there. Then people came up to me. We got a bunch of Vox Pops at the end of that gig. And a whole bunch of people were talking about this idea of relevance. And I'd been coming up to wanting to write the second edition of Legicide. And I realized that actually it's not the second edition of Legicide, it's the spiritual successor. It's what Legicide should grow up to become. And so that's where it was. It's the sequel to my first book, but it's my 4th book.
Spiritual successor. Just explain that. That's such a great line. Where'd you get that from?
Board games.
Is it? Okay, wow.
Often on board games, somebody will come up with a game. So there's a great game called Tigris and Euphrates by Rainer Knizia. Fantastic game. Got one of my favorite victory conditions that I use to explain so much to corporations when I chat to them about it. He didn't want to come up with a sequel for it because he wanted to change certain things. So he came up with a game called Yellow and Yangtze, which is a kind of stripped down, slightly easier, slightly more accessible version of the game. It's not the sequel, but it's the spiritual successor. It's the idea that it shares enough of the same DNA and idea that this is maybe what it could become. And it's a great term that it's different to a sequel, but there's definitely a link. It's a successor. And if you think about your books, some of the books are a more natural spiritual successor to other ones.
Yeah. I love it. I think, wow, what a great term, man. I really enjoy that. Just a quick, we have our guest arriving now. Yes, we have a guest arriving into the call. Where did he disappear to? He's taking a while to, there we go. The guest has arrived. Eric, our first guest at the pod. Yeah, welcome to our pod, Eric. Wonderful to have you here with us. Tell us about yourself.
Excited. I've been looking forward to I was laughing before I even joined because I just knew I was going to come into like getting banter straight into the call.
Yeah, good. Well, welcome, Eric. Nice to have you here. But as Mark Sham says, better late back,
bro.
Than pregnant.
Think about you.
Say that again, Richard.
When he listens back to us, basically talking about him for the last 15 minutes.
Yes, exactly.
I already have a stitch in my side just from laughing before even getting on the call. So,
well, welcome. Nice to have you here. Richard was just unpacking for us why he came up with the book. And so you were saying that people were booking you after you came up with that idea and wanting to keep yourself relevant. So just carry on that sort of speed that you were at.
Yeah. So I knew that there was something there. Sometimes you write a concept that the world feels ready for.
Yeah.
Basically, there is a problem that other people feel.
Yeah.
And this idea of relevance. One thing I recognized by accident is that my audience on LinkedIn, they're 40-plus-year-old people, a lot of whom are in corporate, and some are entrepreneurs, but there are people who are at the same life stage and they're asking the same questions. What more do I have? Does the third act perorate or does the third act fade out?
Yeah.
And I do believe that like the third act should perorate. It should grow and build and there should be a big ending. And so I started thinking about this and obsessing over the ideas. Eric, I was just saying that this book was like a successor to Legicide. It was originally going to be the sequel to it. And it kind of took a different form. And so I had certain ideas that I knew I wanted to cover, but then there was, at the intersection of legacy thinking and relevance. And so that's kind of where the book became. And then I'd been thinking about Eric's book, and I had this idea about being a threat to the future before the future threatens you. And then I immediately sent him a voice note and I said, dude, could you write the foreword for me? This is inspired by you. There's like, I'm starting to wonder how much of my original thinking that how your spark comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
Did Dangerous spark off this thinking for me? And I realized that I wasn't. And if you're not feeling dangerous, you can't feel relevant. And I think that maybe after reading Eric's book, maybe this is what put me, and I don't mean this disparaging, I mean this in a good way, that it made me realize that I wasn't a threat and made me realize that I felt I was in a bit of a hole. And that got the wheels turning. And so it made perfect sense that Eric would be a part of the book.
But they do say that the antidote to anxiousness and feeling like a little bit low is action. You just got to act out of it, right? So like just get your body moving and get going. Besides writing the book, Rich, is there anything else that you've done that brings you back into relevance in your own head. That's such a poignant point you're making. You know, I think one of the things, Eric, we were saying online is that offline, you and I were speaking, and what we should do is record those offline discussions and put them on the Patreon, Richard was saying. And I remember the one time we were speaking about having pain bodies, like having this incredible trigger point that comes over you. And I guess you have like little trigger points, and then you have very large trigger points. And these large trigger points kind of put you into a big hole, like a much bigger hole. And I feel like I've been going through that myself. Like I'm going through like this big, I don't know what it is, but I feel like also like a lack of relevance in some way. Have you done anything, or do you have any processes that you've taken to come back into relevance in your own head?
Oh, yeah. So the one thing is I have a fundamental, I mean, it's not in my belief, as I agree with the Buddhists and everybody that life is inherently suffering, right? That life is really difficult, and it's a net difficult. And what we're trying to find is avenues of joy and happiness and things like this. Remind me to hang up fucking Deepak fucking Chopra to come back to later. What a twat. Anyway, let that be a show.
Because you just came back from GLC.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy him at all.
Can I tell you, I've seen him live twice. I saw Sri Bhagavata live. Useless, bro. Also useless. Like these people that have got these huge entourages and gurus. I was like, what? He said nothing. What? Wait, I got to wait. Shams, please add to our contract immediately in bold.
So wait, I think it's very important that I qualify this as I heard this 2 steps removed. So somebody told me that because at the end of the talk, so there'd been 2 speakers before, they both got a standing ovation. And then when they got to the end of the, Chopra, they said, now please could everybody stand and give Dr. Chopra an ovation. And I was like, fuck off. What a, I already hate slovations. I like, a slovation is when one arsehole at the front stands up and you're sitting in the back of the room and you're like,
yeah. Might as well stand up. Yeah, might as well.
Just got to do it. I want to be brave enough to be the last person sitting. So yes. I remember years ago, we're going to deviate slightly. I remember hearing years ago or reading years ago, and I wish I could remember who wrote it. But basically, the idea is that everybody in their life should give 3 proper standing ovations and no more. And, I remember I was at a flamenco show in the Canary Islands, and they finished at the end of the show, and they finished, and 1 minute I was in my seat. And I do not know what happened. I must have teleported because the next second, myself and 1,000 other individuals were standing. Now I get what a standing ovation is. A standing ovation is when you're so moved by something that 1 second you were sitting in your seat and the next second they released you, and all of that energy exploded out because you were given permission. And
you get pressure of a dude next to you and then a dude next to you.
Slovation.
Slovation. The polar opposite of that, furthest removed away from that, is having in your tech rider that the audience must be told to stand for you. And this from a guru.
Yeah.
Wank stand.
Yeah. Tell us about the 2 talks that got standing ovations. Were they good?
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about this. I think people often will ask me about standing ovations. I don't believe the content speakers will get them often. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you resonate so much. It's not the goal, right? A content speaker or the kind of journalist category speaker will often, the idea that the ovation will happen 6 months later when a person is doing something, and the ovation is the email they send you that says, you know what, this just happened. I remembered what you said in your talk, and then I did this, and now I'm running my own business, or now I've tried this, or now I've done that. There was the one lady, and she told a wonderful story about finding her birth mother. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful, beautiful story. I'm not sure how much it will change me, but at the moment, it was so wonderful. And she was one of us. She was an EO member, and it was just a wonderful moment. And she was very vulnerable in the way she told it, and she got a standing ovation for that. And it was wonderful. It was beautiful. But it was, I don't take anything away from it to that. It was just lovely. It was an acknowledgement of what she did.
Yeah.
The other speaker was a guy. I'm gonna send you out, and if we can include a link to him in the notes. He was a speaker. I'm not even sure what he said. He said 2 amazing lines. Oh, I'll tell you what it is. It'll come to you in a second. He said 2 amazing lines. The one amazing line he said is, be who you needed when you were younger. And it was this concept of
be the mentor you wish you had.
Yeah, be the mentor.
Is that a kid's book guy?
Sorry?
He wrote kids' books or something? Is that
Yes,
guy?
kids' books. Yeah, Brad Montague.
Oh, I saw a clip of him. He was just on Instagram.
He was just You know what he was, guys? He was just so unbelievably himself, wonderfully himself. And so the two lines I wrote down that I really loved was people are ready to be, the first one I said to you, be who you needed when you were younger. And then the other one was people are ready to be invited into something that matters. He started this one movement around socks called Socktober. And he just couldn't believe how much people just gravitated to it and became part of it. And it was almost it felt like it wasn't a big quote. It was like a throwaway statement, the way he delivered it anyway. And he just said he realized that people are ready to be invited into something that matters. Anyway, he was wonderful. He was cool. And some of the guys did a workshop with him 2 or 3 days later and said it was the best hour-long workshop they'd ever done. He basically treated them the same way he treat kids. So that's what he did that was so wonderful is he's used to working with children. He's not going to change how he works. So he's going to take you through a childlike experience of a workshop on visioning your future.
So beautiful. Yes, that's so beautiful. Gabo Mate. Do you know Gabo Mate? You know, Eric, yeah? Gabo Mate. So
Yeah.
he took, he was telling a story about, he took 21 physicians to South America to do ayahuasca. And it was his like group of people. And he says physicians are the most traumatized people in the world because they have to deal with trauma continuously all day, every day. And he says they need the most help. So he took these 21 or 22 physicians to ayahuasca just to help them defrag. And after the first night, the main shamans and the whole shaman crew came to his room after the event. And he thought to himself, they're coming to congratulate him in some way. But they came to the room and said to him, you're not allowed back in that room. He's like, what? He's like, you have too much trauma. He said he got fired from his own event. And what had happened to him, geez, I got goosebumps even talking about it. What had happened to him was when he was 6 months old, World War II started, and his mom gave him away to somebody for 6 months and then came back and got him. But he said the trauma that he'd felt from that level of separation, the shaman even picked up on it. And for the rest of the event, for 7 days, the main shaman would go to him, just him and the shaman, and he would sing a lullaby to him all week, just like a baby. And what he says is we all just need lullabies. We all just need to feel safer within our nervous systems. And, I've been meditating on the word safety over the last few weeks and realizing that at a deep level, I don't think I feel safe. And look, I'm a man. Think about women. Like that level of unsafety is a whole other realm of unsafety. But just within my own skin, am I safe? Am I healthy? Am I safe to make money? Am I safe as my career? Am I safe with my friendships? And the lack of safety is exactly what I think this guy has done, has brought this childlike, because we're all just children. We're all just kids, and some of us with more trauma than others.
Yeah.
Love that.
I love that, dude. I think the safety theme is popping up more and more. I think that's why psychological safety also became a big thing. It's like even just the word safe makes you feel like there's a yearning for something that you might not be having at the moment. Danica sent me this meme the other day. And again, it's a meme that I'm seeing like the theme of it quite often. So the meme says, if you're dating an alpha female, you need to know that they need to be babied at night or else they turn into a dragon. I mean, it's like there's just this part of us that needs to be like cuddled and coddled a bit.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think that's true for
everybody. Yeah.
When I go home, Jazz is very much in charge, but also then she's very like we always joke because I'm the little spoon, right? Like I'm to bed and I need her to hold me. And I've been traveling like speaking, doing things, and I come back and I curl into this little ball and my tiny wife holds me and I feel safe again.
Yeah.
And I think it goes both ways. What I was thinking earlier, I think that if we understand that we're in the space of suffering and that life is difficult, what we need is two kind of areas, two exits, one on either side. We need safe havens and we need escape hatches. And honestly, I would consider both of you in the time that we have, I consider both of you my safe havens. Like whenever we spend time, each of us talking and walking and chatting, I can explain something to you about a vulnerability that I have. And I feel completely safe with you guys sharing that idea. And I know that the concepts I'll get from you will be really helpful. Now I have like my EO forums, which can help me in that, but they don't understand my context as a speaker because there's something about putting yourself out there. And people have huge expectations of me. I think everyone thinks I'm horrible because I hate crowds. So I think they think that I'm aloof, but I'm just anxious. So I think we need these safe havens, and we need to be very aware of who our safe havens are for different contexts, or where our safe havens are. So for this, I need to phone John and Eric. Like for this, I can chat to my forum. For this, I need to be with my wife. And then the other thing I think we need is escape hatches. And escape hatches are the things where that's what Relentless Relevance, the book was it was a degree of like, fuck, there's all this shit going on in my head and I'm feeling irrelevant and I need to do something that will open an escape hatch. And it'll take that negative energy and boost it towards something. And I think that's what it was for me, it felt like an escape from, so I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm just saying that it was enough to get me out, and writing it down and like bleeding on the page was what I needed to for the escape hatch. I've never thought about this concept before, like 5 minutes ago. So it may be wrong and not fully formed, but I thought you guys point.
I think the escape for me is a defrag. I often, I made a statement on social media, which people are still messaging me about, was I'm not writing another book because AI is here. And now I've got 2 books and like, hey, I thought you're not writing another book. And I'm like, yes, I know I wasn't going to. But you know what I think it is I missed having somewhere to put my thinking. Like I didn't have somewhere to release the continuous thought process. And Feng Shui is a great principle. It says bring anything new into your life, you need to get rid of the old. And so this is really just, and you call it escape. I think it's just releasing incessant thinking so that you can make space for more thinking.
It's a
refile, defrag. Yeah, it's a defrag. It's a computer defrag and then push it out and then go. But before we carry on, I mean, I want to know more about the book. So tell us about some principles about the book. Tell us a little bit just tell us more about the book itself.
The book is, the book is basically, could be called, and I kind of preface this at the beginning, it could be called Relentless Relevance and Other Stories, in that it is a culmination of a whole bunch of ideas. And I would like to believe that there is a definite thread. So I had all of these ideas I wanted to speak about, but I spoke about them through the lens of relevance. And there were some ideas that in Legicide 2.0 kind of thing, that when I went through them and I thought, this doesn't actually work in the lens of relevance, so I scrapped it. But it's a number of other ideas that I wanted to think about. I did want to think about strategy. I think it's a deeply problematic concept. I wanted to think about utility and novelty and where the two of them exist and the importance of being useful in the world today. I wanted to think about longevity, in that we're obsessed with longevity from a health point of view. We're a little bit obsessed about it from a wealth point of view, but we're not obsessed nearly enough from a relevance point of view. If you're old and wealthy and nobody needs you, then you're fucked. Right.
And people die, and people actually die off.
Right. So, and I would argue that when you can be old and poor and relevant and you'll be fine. Right. If you're unhealthy, I think you have to be healthy, but I think health and relevance, but I would even argue unless you're relevant, you don't want to live. So in the hierarchy of things, I would go relevance, health, and then wealth. Because if you are if you're healthy and even irrelevant and nobody needs you, it doesn't matter. In fact, I think it's almost worse. You want to be healthy and useful to the world. And so we should be constantly thinking about the fact that how am I useful? And what does the next era of useful be? So that was one of the concepts. I wanted to it's a weird one because I wanted to think about novelty quite a bit. I'm trying to separate trends from elements that deserve our attention. So the fourth industrial revolution was a trend. And I saw that the day it happened, and I went to war with it from day one. But AI is not a trend. AI is an operating system upgrade. And this is where we exist. And we're not allowed to be bored of AI. But equally, I gave very little time talking about AI itself because I didn't want to date my thinking in that, oh, look at this cool thing you can do making an image. Now, I wanted to extrapolate on and be prognostic, which is a word I love. This idea of strategy exists at the 5-year mark. It's too early. It's far enough away to require prediction. And I think prediction is broken. You cannot predict anymore.
No, there's no such thing. Yeah.
Prognostic thinking is imagination. And I think that instead of thinking, we should be thinking about our futures. Like we should imagine that we are at this point in which a number of things could happen, like a metaverse split. And then we should be thinking about what those futures are. And we should see which ones are we most excited about to try and realize. And that happens at like 10, 15, 20 years ahead. And anyway, so there's a whole bunch of elements like this that I wanted to go through. So I do believe brain-computer interfaces are a big part of the future. I don't think that general intelligence is as interesting as we think it is. I would love to debate with you guys. I don't think agentic. I think agentic is a really, really good short-term solution that by the time we reach it, will no longer be relevant. So because we'll be able to operate in absence of agents. And I wanted to try and think further.
I love that you, I just want to make one point. I love that you made future plural. And I do that often in my talks, is that the future is plural. It's not singular. And you got like all these opportunities and yeah, so I like that. Just wanted to comment on that. Sorry, Eric.
Cool. Yeah, cool t-shirt.
Futures plural. Yeah, futures. We're moving into the futures. Yeah. Go on.
Have you ever seen that Tim Urban graphic where he shows the branches of all like the decisions you've made in life and like as you like in your present, like all these are closed off to you, but like there continues to be this sort of like branch effect of based on the decisions you make. Such a cool graph to look at and to realize that literally in the moment, you're just creating your reality as you go, decision by decision.
Although a lot of the time, those decisions are made for us, right? Because somebody invents a technology and the world is now different. You know, somebody lands on Mars and the world is different. And so we don't have complete high agency. Although, by the way, I really enjoyed that. Did you read George Mack's essay that was released last week? George Mack he's a thinker. I think he's a thinker that I'd enjoy having a conversation with. I feel like he's a kindred spirit in that way. He wrote an essay that's at highagency.com that I would highly recommend people listen to. It's basically a 30-minute story. Interestingly, though, the one problem I had with it, and I think we need to be careful, it's the same thing with us when we're speaking about our content. So he's created an essay on agency that you can read in 30 minutes, but he did an hour-and-a-half discussion with Chris Williamson on his podcast about it. So when I read the essay on the bus the other day going to Pearl Harbor, every single concept that he mentioned in the book, he'd already gone into more detail on a podcast. And one of my bugbears with speakers, my pet hates, is when I see a speaker whose book I read and enjoyed, is if they only give me content from the book. So you almost have to take the principles from the book and find different stories for the talk. And we can't always do that. So there's some that echo across, but I always want to make sure that I give the audience something new that they necessarily thought if they read the book, and vice versa, I guess.
So I want to say two things. One is a quick comment, then the other one is a question that I have for you. What's quite interesting is that this year, Dangerous has had quite a resurgence. You know, I'm being asked to speak about it more. Like the book has gone into a second print run. I've had a client that wants books, which means we have to do a third print run now as well.
Wow.
It's quite interesting for me to see that. Because I thought I was done with the idea. I thought I wrote the book and I'm done with it. And now all of a sudden it's like, it's creeping back into my life. And I was doing a webinar the other day, taking people through all these different ideas that have emerged from my coaching practice over the years. So the first one was speaking a bit about being dangerous. The second one was about the drama of change in this inner transition we have to deal with. The third was about accretion, like all these sort of like the highlight reel of the things that I've spoken about. At the end, the most voted up question on the webinar by far was, how do I become more dangerous? And I thought it's so interesting, you know, like the people are telling you what they want to hear more about, like lean more into that. And then as I've been revisiting the idea, it's been morphing in a big way. Before I would say, well, being dangerous is this pattern of thinking, feeling, and acting that empowers you to overcome your threats. And now that I've been thinking about it, I'm like, well, as I break that down, there's actually a few traits that I would highlight. So agency, assertiveness, and adaptability. But then if you take agency, you can actually break that down into patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting. So agency, the thinking is that I can solve whatever comes my way. I can solve it. There's this ownership. The feeling is a feeling of self-confidence that I can do this. And then the action is, well, whatever the next high leverage action might be, even if it's small. So all of a sudden, and it's not perfect yet, but I find myself revisiting an idea that I thought was in my past. And all of a sudden now, like if you go and read the book, this is actually what I'm trying to tie into, Rich, is that if you go and read the book, I have an entire new set of thinking that's being added onto it that you won't find in the book. So I just wanted to make that.
It's called spiritual evolution. What's it, Richard? What's the
spiritual successor? What is the spiritual successor to dangerous?
Spiritual successor to dangerous.
Yeah.
You know what happens a lot of time when we write books, that is the beginning of our thinking, right? That's the beginning of the release valve or the escape hatch. Like I had an idea and a feeling and I needed to get it out in words. And once it goes into the world, you start thinking about it more. And my biggest problem is that I try and move on to the next thing. So I already know what the book I want to write is, which is problematic because I should probably allow this other one just to keep expanding. Wow, I should
look. I think your new idea will be an extension of this just because of who you are. I don't think we can get away too far from who we are, really. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. I'll go, Rick. Eric, sorry.
You know,
you can point.
like
Yeah.
if you think of, I mean, we've said this before, like if you look at Joe Dispenza, like same idea for how long, like same language, same patterning, same phrasing. And many other big guys like James Clear, like he hasn't written a new Atomic Habits. Like he's just riding the Atomic Habits train. So it's quite interesting because I think there is something about spending more time with the same idea. But anyway, like the side note was just, it's quite interesting to me that I thought I was done with the idea, but the idea wasn't done with me.
And with you.
And that now in a very natural, organic way, it's kind of come back in. And even Rich, even you reaching out and like, asking me to be involved with the forward and your work and the languaging, like even all of that, it's just like, it's like a nudge that's been happening for me, but that's just the side story. The question I wanted to ask you was...
Geez, that was a long side story. Bloody
Yeah.
hell. That was like a full side story.
Listen, I mean, if today's podcast is anything, it's just the podcast of tangents. What can I say? Would you absolutely get put 3 speakers on a call?
No.
We have libraries of stories.
Long story short, too late. It's already long. Keep going.
Every time something to make a long story short, you missed it. That is something you only say. I've never heard someone say.
Yeah, when it's short. Yeah.
They always tell the long story. Then they basically, what they mean is to end this long story.
Your story. Yeah. But when somebody at the end of a conference also stands up and doesn't ask a question, like goes on this rant, it's like, Eric, I have a question for you, but before I tell you that.
That's at the launch.
Fred Roots.
No, my friend Jacques, he's wonderful. It was a lot. I was looking at him, I was thinking, Jacques, is there a question as a question mark? Where are we going with this?
Yeah.
But it was like, I also love the idea that I know he had something to say, that he had this idea that he wanted to get out. And when you're not a speaker, filling an idea in a short period of time is difficult.
Very difficult. Yeah.
So I also wanted to give him the room and space to like he thought it, but he needed to verbalize it. And at the end of it, you could see both Eric and I sitting on stage. I'm like, okay. And then he was like, which brings me to my question. Boom. And I was like, okay. Cool.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Eric, you had a question.
So
apparently,
the question was...
Apparently, yeah.
Apparently, no, it was all a build-up. The question was, you said that relevance is, am I useful to the situation? And of course, I know we are mostly speaking about our customers and like the commercial side of it, but is that the same? Like I'm thinking about, for example, I'm also relevant to my friends and my family. Like, is that the same question? Like, am I useful to them? And that determines my relevance in that situation.
I think I don't use the term I use the term useful, but appropriate is the term that I kind of mishmashed the definition together through different things I found. And the definition that I love is the state of being appropriate to the matter at hand. Okay, so relevance is the state of being appropriate to the matter at hand. So your first question in every situation is to ask yourself, what is the matter at hand? Being a good partner, being a good friend, showing up early, showing up on time, making the right effort on, Mother's Day, whatever the case may be. Like whatever it is, you have to, and this is why I like it so much, because I do believe that relevance used to be a waypoint. I think that we check every now and then, every 5 years, like, am I still relevant? And businesses would check that every now and then. Whereas now I believe relevance is the road that we travel. And I think we have to constantly sense check ourselves. And the question we just have to ask is, again, am I still appropriate to the matter at hand? And what I love, like the best things, I've been trying to train our speakers on Story to Stage on this idea more often. You want to say something that begs the question. Right? So I want to put an idea out there that begs a question where the audience is saying, okay. But then I want to answer that question. And we should be constantly finishing bits of content that beg a question that make people go further. And so the first question is that everyone should be asking themselves, in my business, my career, my situation, my environment as a partner, husband, whatever, wife, what is the matter at hand? What is the issue that we're solving for right now? What is the thing that is important as we exist today? And then we have to ask ourselves, how appropriate am I in my current situation to, I guess, the solution of that? Or in fact, it might not even be that, because it might not be the solution. It might be, I am the cause of that. So if Jazz is having a lot of anxiety because I'm traveling so much and things like this, and I haven't been taking her with me, for example, maybe the idea, and this isn't an issue as it happens, but let's pretend that was, the matter at hand is that I'm not spending enough time with my wife. I'm appropriate to it in that I'm traveling too much. And so maybe I can fix that. Understanding those two concepts. And what I think a lot of people do is that they're appropriate, but to the yesterday's matter at hand. And that's the problem, is that we need to be appropriate to today's and tomorrow's. And so that's why we need to be asking this. And like one of the lines I put forward is that if you don't have relevance in business is one of your core values, because I don't see them as values, right? I see them as behaviors. We call them values, but we can't dictate values to humans who've been alive for 50 years when they join our company. But we can give desired behaviors. And if you don't have, like relentless relevance even as one of your behaviors or values of your business, irrelevance is coming. This has to be something we're thinking about. And incidentally, I'm not arguing jumping on trends. I'm arguing just spotting what the real matter at hand is and knowing when to become appropriate to it. That makes sense.
A lot, yeah. I mean, it also sounds like adaptability. It's like you got to constantly be adapting yourself. I mean, the way I speak about it as a part of the adaptability and the relevance is what you call it, is letting go of things. And I remember you many, many years ago talking about innovation wasn't so much about what you do, it's about what you stop doing. And I think that's the same idea here, is who are you stopping to be to adopt a new version of you that is more appropriate here? What part of your identity are you willing to let go of?
Yes. And like we have to shed our, right along the way. Like
what?
Well, like a snake that sheds its skins.
Yes.
We need to recognize that we're all a bit of a Theseus ship, and that there's we're made up of these new parts and these new things as we go. And recognizing that in order to become that new thing, we need to let go of part of who we were before. And John, we were chatting about it earlier. This idea of this confidence and arrogance thing that we had when we were younger, that Joburg that we were, and how do we let go of that to become better? And also knowing what not to let go of.
When somebody comes to me and says, "Did you grow up in Joburg?" I'm like, I failed. Damn it. Somebody's picked up that I'm from Joburg. I'm like, can't get that out of me,
One of John and I's big public arguments, and it was very small. Only the two of us knew we were arguing. He called me out about the Joburg thing. And I think while I totally agree with you, by the way, of everything you're saying, there's inconceivable that I would have been the person I was without Joburg.
Without Joburg, of course.
It's an amazing launch pad.
We were at war, bro. Like, I mean, it was just like, you got to get going. There's so much to do. Yeah, it was a lot, man. We worked so hard, dude. I've never worked so hard in my life, actually. Look, time is up. I want to say thank you so much for arriving at all, Eric. It was very nice of you to make an appearance. But more importantly, Richard, thank you for arriving.
Podcast halfway through. It's
podcast
250 episodes. What do you mean?
For everybody listening, go on, Rich.
No, just thank you. You guys suggested this so that we could get stuff out on the book. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. It's just knowing, this is what I talk about the safe space. It's really safe when people call you towards it. So like, that harbor, you guys were like, you invited me in to help me promote the book. Yeah, it means the world, man.
Thank you. Pleasure. So tell us where you can get hold of you, where they get hold of you, where's the book available? Just tell us a little bit about that so people can go and get it.
Yeah, so the book is available in South Africa at the moment, where good books are sold. It will be available in the last week of April internationally and on Audible and Spotify. So for print or Kindle, or it'll be on Amazon and Audible and Spotify for audiobook. So that will happen at the end of the month, the last week of the month. So please, definitely, if you go to getrich.af and you want to be notified if it's not available when you hear this, just sign up to my newsletter there, and you'll be notified as soon as it comes out. And yeah, that is it. Thank you so much.
And just last question, is there any way of us watching the talk you did at one of them or one of the trysts or not?
Yes, absolutely. We recorded it in Joburg. And I'll probably, in Cape Town, and I'll put an edit online.
Do. Yeah, I think that'd be really great for people to just see you on stage. If you haven't seen Richard on stage, he's fantastic. He's funny. He's all over that place. High energy. I'm sad I missed it. Actually,
appropriate to the matter, but also
appropriate. Yeah, he was incredibly relevant when he was on stage. Well, thank you so much, Richie. It was really great to have you. As always, we should do this more often. And until next week, for all the listeners, thank you so much for joining us. You can also find us Expansive anywhere online. Our book also comes out in the next couple of weeks, in May, actually. Mid-May, the book comes out. We're looking forward to that and all the launches. So keep an eye out for that and an ear out for that. Until next week, stay expansive.